Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we're going to be doing another installment of the weekly meta breakdown where we look at the top performing decks on the MTG Arena ladder. This particular video will be for Historic, and we're actually going to do both Historic Best of 1 and Best of 3 in a singular video. Usually we split these, but there just hasn't been enough data since the release of Brothers War to have enough of a data set for Best of 3, and even Best of 1 hasn't seen too much of a shakeup. We'll cover some changes in terms of some of the stock lists where things are progressing. But we will start off, as always, we get the data from predominantly Untapped GG, which you see on the screen. Companion tool runs alongside Arena Client, tracks win rates, loss rates, whole bunch of cool stuff. Link is in the video description. There's also a bunch of deck lists we're getting from MTG Arena Zone that they've curated from other folks from like Twitter and stuff. So did a bit of digging for this video. I'll paste all the deck lists in the video description if you want to copy and paste those into Arena as well. So from Untapped for Best of 1, from December 1st to December 8th, 19,000 games played from Platinum to Mythic Rank. And if we jump into it, the top performing deck is It Wizards at 66%, 67%. So there's kind of two versions of Wizards. There's the traditional version that we've seen week in and week out. This version's got a couple percentage points higher win rate, but a smaller population in terms of games played. And really what they did is they shifted the Reckless Charge down to 3 and are playing to maximize velocity. It's another way to gain haste from the deck. You can cast it from your graveyard as well. The flip side is it requires you to discard a card from hand in order to cast it, whereas the Reckless Charge it's a more expensive card to cast, but it can always just be flashed back for 3 mana. I'm unsure how I feel about this. You get to a point with the game with Wizards where you're top decking a lot, so throwing away cards isn't always the best. I guess you could hold lands at a certain point, but it's an interesting card there that's included. Also see a Pillar of Flame in here, as well as some copies of Slip Out the Back, so a bit more of a protection element. Fewer card draw spells, so it's usually where you're seeing the shave off. Usually see some combination of like 4 Expressive Iteration, and then 1 of the Mentor's Guidance, or 4 in 1, something like that. So interesting to see that kind of shave off. We see the Spike Field Hazard here, where this version's not playing Spike Field. 19 lands is actually pretty light. I'm actually playing 21 in my Wizards deck, and it's pretty ambitious playing 19 lands with Hall of the Storm Giant as well. You're better off probably Den. So it's an interesting kind of inclusion. This is the list here. I'm going to keep it up, but I think I'm going to link the actual Wizards list, the traditional one. It's got a bigger population size. I don't fully agree with some of these choices, but if you do want to try it out, like I said, it's on the screen. You can make those quick revisions, but you can import the bulk of the list itself with arguably a better mana base. I think this configuration is better. You should be playing, like Storm Carved Coast is not as good as all the fast lines coming in this deck here. Same, like you should probably be playing the full River Glide. Just some interesting choices all along with some of these land options. So we will jump into the next deck. It's Boros Affinity. So this is a Lurrus companion deck. And it's an artifact aggro shell. There's a few different variations, but this one's going really kind of turbo. The main kind of engine of the deck is Retrofitter Foundry, as well as Thopters. So basically the last mode of Retrofitter Foundry, sacrifice Thopter, you get to create a 4/4. Well, that means you can, on turn 1, have a 4/4 because Ornithopter is 0 mana. Barb Spike also makes Thopters as well as Yotai, so a lot of ways to kind of fuel the Thopter. You got tax effects with Esper Sentinel, removal, Importable Hole, Ingenious Smith to kind of dig, Mashiko for big power-ups, Trample and Lifelink, and Toolcraft gets boosts from all the artifacts in the deck. You also have like Darksteel Citadel on the side in the mana base that also ups your artifact count. This has been a consistent top performing deck. And then we have Is It Belcher. Played this deck for a video. Some people were complaining that the deck wasn't that good. It's still got a 60% win rate, 61% win rate. It is an all-in combo deck. Some games you're just going to do nothing, and other games you're going to turn 3 kill. It is fairly consistent right now. I did make the claim that it could potentially see a ban, and bans aren't always because of win rates. It's playstyle, it's interaction. If you look Tybalt's Trickery, that was a 50% win rate deck usually, but it still got banned in Best of 1. There's a lot of ways to hate it, but the thing is, even just traditional artifact removal doesn't stop Goblin Charbelcher the combo turn. You need counter spells to interact with it in the stack. So if they just cast the Naked Charbelcher, yeah, you could respond to it because they need to activate. But the main way the deck does it is they use Ironcrag Feet, which generates 7 mana, 4 to cast the Belcher, and then you have priority once it resolves to activate the Belcher. So even if they destroy it in response, you still kill your opponent. And the way you're killing your opponent is you don't have lands in your deck in a traditional sense. You're playing all these dual-faced lands, like Valakut Awakening, Kazul, like all these kind of Zendikar lands. So your deck never sees a land, and you flip through your whole deck, and then you just like shoot them in the face. You get ahead of curve with stuff like Strike It Rich to generate you treasures. You have Seize the Spoils to generate treasures, Magma Opus as well, and then Pact of Negation to protect your combo element of it. And then lastly, we have Selesnya Squirrel Twin. This is usually boosted by like the lower ranks. Like even with this, Johnny's Pridemate should be Bishop of Wings. So this is like a real kind of budgety version, but this is just a quick switch. This deck's not even good. The mana base is awful. Cut. Is there a better Squirrel Twin list? There is not. Okay. We cancel the Squirrel Twin for the week. It's not that good. They get picked apart by a lot of the early removal. So going to MTG Arena Zone, I apologize for the smattering of ads, but it is. So Sci-Hi, another streamer in December, got to number 12 Mythic with an Azorius Mill deck. So the historic anthologies, or not the historic, the Brothers War retro artifacts brought us Mesmeric Orb. So whenever a permanent becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. And this deck is using both the 9 lives Solemnity lock. So 9 lives puts counters on when you're dealt damage. Solemnity prevents you from getting counters. So that kind of combos in that regard. You protect yourself with Leyline of Sanctity, and then you can mill your opponent with these 2 cards here predominantly, as well as the Teferi's Tutelage. You have an Idyllic Tutor to find you combo pieces. Ashiok, Rest in Peace, exiles graveyards. Temporary Lockdown to deal with troublesome permanents. And then Pull of the Moon Mist. Enter the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. When it was entered the battlefield, if it was kicked, choose a non-land permanent card in your hand. It perpetually... Okay, so it gives a card in your hand an O-ring effect. You also have Ipinet Rivulet as another way to mill your opponent. So interesting deck here if you want to mill. This is a way to kind of do about it in a prison-style shell. And then we're going to jump to some best of 3 lists. So this is a Dimir Ninjas deck from Sano Mituro, number 12 Mythic. So keep in mind, these are as they're recorded, so there's not 2 people at Mythic at the same time. But this is kind of using a lot of the same engine with the Retrofitter Foundry. You have both the Thopters and then Changelings. So Changeling Outcast is both a Thopter and a Ninja. And then you have a bunch of evasive creatures. In a way, flying can't be blocked. And then you use stuff like Moon Circuit Hacker to draw a card with Ninjutsu. Brazen Boar is just tempo. Ninja Deep Hours to draw you cards. You have Ingenious Infiltrator. Whenever a ninja you control deals combat damage, you draw a card. So it's kind of just like a tempo shell, draw you cards. Cyber Siphoner to get stuff back. Fatal Push, Cut Down, Infernal Grasp, Drown and Lock, Bone Shards, all types of removal, make Disappear, Spell Pierce as counter style effects. Mana base pretty clean, Watery Grave, the Clear Water Pathway, Underground River. Just clean 20 lands. I would probably play like a creature land or 2 in here. Seems pretty free, like a Hive maybe. Maybe a Takanuma, and then Otawara. Just seems like free adds to the mana base. You got Karn, I guess to shut off any of the artifact style decks, combo decks that are using it. Notably for the next deck we run into, it'll explain. You have the negates, Swarm Shambler, get you copies of Virus Beetles for like the control matchups, keep attacking their hand. The Doomblade, I guess just catch all removal for non-black creatures. Negates, power word kills, disputes, so like counter spells for combo decks on Mordigo, Witch's Vengeance for any of the tribal decks, Cage for graveyard decks, and then Lantern of the Lost for graveyard hate. We then go to probably the most obscene of the combos right now. So this one is from Althrix, Elf MTG. Mistmin also popularized a version of this deck where he got #1 Mythic last month for the whole month. And it is the Ominous Traveler Ashnot Altar Infinite combo. So basically what you're trying to do with this deck is, with a Goblin Trap Finder, you get a copy of Ominous Traveler. Ominous Traveler then becomes 0 mana because of the cost reduction. When you cast Ominous Traveler, you get to draft something from its spellbook. And then what you try to do is basically keep casting a bunch of spells from it, sack those spells, you return Trap Finder to hand, recast it, so you eventually net positive in terms of mana, and then you can keep going wide and then keep casting more copies. There's the Captivating Vampire, which can give things haste eventually, and you kind of take over that, and you just kind of build in a massive board state. So it's a lot of clicking involved. You have stuff like Diabolic Intent to find you your combo pieces, Fable, stuff like that. Alt's list was playing Phyrexian Fleshgorger, but Mistmin's list was playing Karn the Great Creator. For like a toolbox, you can get stuff like Aetherflux Reservoir to kind of combo and deal damage that way. But the core of the deck is kind of get this card to get this to cost 0, use Ashnot's Altar, cast a bunch of things, get Carpal Tunnel in your hand from trying to cast all the cards. You got like Artifact, just general flexibility, hand hate, steal stuff to sack, feed the Swarm for like graveyard pieces, or just like certain hate pieces. Brotherhood's End to deal with aggressive decks or the artifact decks. Also can hit with Planeswalkers, so it can hit Karn, for example. Karn shuts off this deck because you can't... Actually, this is a mana ability, so... No, Karn... Okay, so here's the thing. Karn shuts this off, Pithing Needle doesn't. So Pithing Needle specifically says activated ability of sources with chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. Ashnot Altar is a mana ability because it's generating mana, so keep that in mind. Graveyard Hate, just turning off certain pieces. Graveyard Hate, and then Curse can be used in the mirror. Whenever they cast the second spell for the turn, they take 2 points of damage. And then lastly, we have Selesnya Humans, which got #60 Mythic by Adric. And this is kind of like a fair creature attack style deck. You have Thalia's in here, Ranger, Captain of Eos, can find you copies like Esper Sentinel, Dauntless Bodyguard, Giant Killer, Hopeful Initiate, Thalia's Lieutenant, pumps up your team. Skyclaves to exile stuff. Adeline is just a big, powerful creature. And then you have kind of the 8 Coco effects, the Inquisitor Captain and the Collected Company to find your key spells. The notable thing with this deck is you probably want the brush lands now in this deck over something like Forsaken Crossroads because they'll always come into play on tap. That's the Pain line from the most recent set. Sideboard, Luminarch Aspirants when you just need to go slightly bigger. Artifact Enchantment Hate. This is good for just like kind of 2-for-1 value. You can also shut off like board wipes and stuff like that from your opponent. Just more exile removal style effects. Declaration of Stone, catch-all removal, especially for go-wide style strategies. I don't know what this card does. Each player who controls an artifact or enchantment creates a 2/2 bear token and destroy all artifacts and enchantments. Okay, so kind of a mass artifact board wipe for the artifact decks. Graveyard Hate, just general removal, and more Graveyard Hate. So that's pretty much it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing, what you've been liking in Historic, and we'll catch you next time. Hopefully have a bigger population of data. We can go from there. If you are looking for Explorer content, the new anthology comes out next week. I covered 5 decks that are Pioneer ports for the most part, getting us as close to the Pioneer versions as possible, the new cards that are coming in the anthology. So that video's currently up if you want to check it out, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for watching.